what does a safe community look like to you? For some, it's about fostering friendly and supportive relationships between people and avoiding violence. To others, safe communities look like spaces with well-developed and maintained infrastructure. However you define it, members of the Senate's Judiciary and Public Safety Committee are tasked with working towards it by assigning resources or enacting new laws. With me now is the committee's ranking minority member, Republican Senator Warren Limmer. Senator, thank you for being here.
Glad to be here.
Now, Senator, as part of this committee, you've been both chair and ranking minority member. So what are the differences you've noticed depending on which caucus is in charge?
Well, each caucus represents a different political party, and as a result, we have different philosophical approaches to just about everything that we decide in government. But in public safety, we recognize, I think both parties recognize, the number one purpose of government is the safety of its citizens. It's a constitutional requirement in the state of Minnesota, as it is in just about every other state as well. However, we do have differences. We have differences of how much money we give to the courts. How do we handle corrections? What are the criminal sentences that we write? Right now, Democrats seem to be leaning more in a less restrictive, less incarceration mode than what we would think in the Republican Party. There's also differences in how we handle law enforcement. We're trying to recognize the causes of crime. They dig a little deeper and recognize people sometimes are a product of their environment. And we would probably recognize that too, but we also need to recognize there has to be a defined sentence to prevent or deter crime in the future. So that's why we would move forward in more restrictive result and rely on incarceration for violent offenders.
Senator, something both caucuses seem to be converging on this section in the public safety sphere is road or driver safety. And you have several bills out to that effect as well. Senate File 1373, which expands license suspensions for people suspected of criminal vehicular homicide, and Senate File 1374, which increases penalties for certain violations of driving without a valid license. Why do you think this area, public safety, is getting so much attention this session?
It's getting more attention because we have more people scoffing the law. We have more people driving erratically, intentionally reckless. The first bill that you mentioned, that would require a police officer, if they suspect and find probable cause that a person committed criminal vehicular murder or operation, meaning you caused the death of someone due to your intentional, reckless driving, a police officer, based on probable cause, could suspend that person's driver license immediately without going to trial. Then when it does go to trial, then the court would decide. This came from a situation that came from my district. A driver was driving 90 miles an hour in a 45-mile zone and caused an accident which resulted in the death of an elderly woman. Looking back at his record, he had numerous traffic violations for high speed just about everywhere he ever drives. And that's the bill that we have. We have another bill that if you're driving with a revoked license, causing an accident, which resulted in severe bodily injury, or a third violation in 10 years with a revoked license, then you would receive an enhanced penalty of gross misdemeanor. But quite honestly, the bottom line is we're recognizing there's a change in driver behavior, and it's not getting safer, it's getting more dangerous, and the legislature needs to respond immediately.
Senator, I hate hearing stories where loss is what drives, new laws, but I love that you guys are able to take that and move forward and protect more families as we go through. You have another bill out, Senate File 292, which asks for additional state trooper appropriations. Talk me through the bill and what those additional funds could be used for.
Well, the bill is actually recognizing the need to recruit new troopers for our highway patrol. Right now, there are about 21 troopers short, and they need the funds. They don't have the funds recognized in the governor's budget. We're trying to convince the governor and the DFL majority that troopers need more funds. We need more troopers on the road to protect our citizens. So it's really about recruiting. Law enforcement also has a problem with retaining police officers across the board, whether it's in the troopers or local police. That's another issue that we're addressing as well. One other one is VSEDs. VSED is Violent Crime Enforcement Team. They're specialized units, they're multi-jurisdictional, and they focus on violent crime, drug trafficking, sex trafficking, some of the more serious crimes that don't stay local. They travel all over the state. And we have 21 teams out there now, but we need more, and the BCA has requested this fund. So we're trying to advance that one as well.
Yeah, I know that Senator Duckworth also has a bill out for law enforcement officer recruitment, and he has a different angle. So I love how it's, you guys are tackling this issue from different sides. Speaking of funding, though, the Senate's budget targets were recently released, and Judiciary and Public Safety Committee actually gained funding over both fiscal years. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's a general recognition that the funds that we govern in our committee are essential to governing. They're recognized by the state constitution. And quite honestly, they are the priority of the state, the safety of its citizens. Democrats have a hard time right now because they increased funding last year by 40% in not funding, in spending, as well as spending all of the $18 billion surplus last year. They raised taxes by close to $10 billion, and they still don't have enough to handle the new spending obligations that they made for the long term. Many can question whether or not that was a wise decision to spend that money the way they did and have such extravagant spending in the last year. But the commitment is there. It's the law. And now they're having a trouble trying to find where do we get more funding. And it'll trigger, if they have to do it the traditional way, they're going to raise taxes in an election year, and no politician wants to be in that track. So quite honestly, we do have a difference of philosophical opinions on how do we spend money, what is our real priorities. Quite honestly, they've got a problem and they're trying to figure it out. So they bumped the budget for our division a little bit, but it's only a 3% increase. And quite honestly, it's for a 2-year budget, and we're going to be needing more, which means, in my opinion, let's start reducing the spending in other wasteful areas or inefficient areas in state government, and believe me, there are plenty.
Senator, given the funding that you have received for your committee, does it give you confidence that the committee's work and priorities will move forward as imagined, or are there other hurdles still to clear?
Well, the biggest hurdle is going to be the conference committee between the Senate and the House. The House, as you know, has a tied vote. They are not going to be getting too extravagant with their budgets. And yet at the same time, in the Senate, Democrats have a 1-vote majority. It's not a massive amount, but it's enough to advance their protocols and their priorities, which are going to be different than the tied House. So that's going to be a big struggle in the conference committees, and I would imagine it's going to last for weeks in order to figure this out.
But hopefully not a special session.
I think I would settle for a special session, but not a canceled budget in the state of Minnesota. No one wants to have a budget shortfall based on not getting the work done in the legislature.
I think that's something everyone can agree on. Senator, before we get to those conference committees with the House, the Senate has to prepare its omnibus bill. So where is your committee in that process right now?
Right now, we have not seen the formal draft yet. We're expecting that tomorrow in the Judiciary Committee, and we'll be looking at it for the first time. Senator Latz is the chair. His team will be putting their budget together. We'll be in a reactive mode. We have a few provisions in that bill, but there are a number of others that may cause some of my members not to vote for the entire bill.
Okay, Senator, any final thoughts?
You know, this is kind of an atypical legislative session. We usually don't have a budget crisis on our heels. We don't have at the same time a nearly tied legislative session. I'm kind of surprised that the Senate majority is advancing such large reforms that are more liberal in philosophy. I would have thought that they would have recognized that since we're all tied vote, and it's not limited to partisan differences, this reflects the tied sentiments out in our public. And when you have a tied sentiment out in the public, it would be wise for political leaders to recognize that, slow down a little bit, and begin to recognize the base decisions that have to be made and not advance wild-eyed new reforms. This is not a time for that. This is a time to pause, catch our breath, and let the public tell us where we need to go in the next election.
All right, Senator, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.